I'm sorry. I'm not strong enough after all.
So be it. One final pain, the last in this world. One last sorrow. For me and for you.
You can't leave! If you're gonna disappear somewhere else, then I'm coming with you!
When Soul Hackers 2 was announced, I was so excited because it meant that Atlus remembered that they have series other than Shin Megami Tensei and Persona, leading me to watch many videos about the original Soul Hackers and develop an appreciation for it. And as more gameplay was shown leading up to the release, I felt that we were going to get another quality turn-based RPG from Atlus, giving me hope that if this game does well enough, it could lead to other series being revived with games like Devil Survivor 3, Digital Devil Saga, and Strange Journey 2. But as reviews rolled in, the response to Soul Hackers 2 was extremely mixed, leaning towards a negative slant, leaving me to wonder if I even want to play this game. But considering you're watching this video, I did. So after 40 plus hours, I don't know how to feel about Soul Hackers 2. And that's because Soul Hackers 2 doesn't know what it wants to be. But before we get started, if you enjoy my videos, please like, subscribe, and share my content. Also, if you wish to support my work directly, becoming a YouTube member is the best way to do so. Soul Hackers 2 brings back the usual turn-based combat system Shin Megami Tensei games are known for, with its focus on enemy weaknesses, buffs, and debuffs. However, in this game, instead of getting an extra turn or action for attacking a weakness, it activates the Sabbath system, which is unique to Soul Hackers 2. This system activates when an enemy is weak against your attacks and begins stacking the demons in your inventory to perform a Sabbath bonus attack at the end of your turn. This creates an interesting dynamic where you want to have as many demons as possible to build up your stack for the Sabbath attack, and for those demons to have a variety of abilities to take advantage of those weaknesses. This is very different in comparison to other SMT games, where you would usually have your characters focus on one or two types of abilities. But on top of that, command skills have returned from Strange Journey, and they allow you to swap out your demons, augment your Sabbath attacks, or give you passive abilities like extending buffs or healing your party after every action. But there's even more, with mystiques that allow your party to have certain bonuses to specific elements, like reduced MP usage and bonus damage. And lastly, Soul Hackers 2 has comps, which are the party's main weapons that are upgraded through the entire game by using materials that are collected by your demons in a dungeon or winning fights. And these upgrades vary between simply increasing attack power, improving a character's affinity to elements so they can use better mystiques, and getting permanent abilities that stick with the characters until the end of the game, leading to a combat system that has a lot of flexibility even if it can be cheesed from time to time. And while I didn't enjoy it initially, as I played it became more enjoyable. However, this is where my outright positive takes end. So with that being said, let's jump into the atmosphere, environment, exploration, and visuals. Starting with the environment, Soul Hackers 2 is supposed to be the combination of Shin Megami Tensei's philosophical ideals presented within a cyberpunk world. Unfortunately, with this game, I don't believe the developers have a good understanding of the cyberpunk genre and confused it for sci-fi. Or lastly, the people who worked on this didn't want to incorporate cyberpunk elements into the story. The world of Soul Hackers 2 is essentially a Blade Runner style universe where technology and social progress have stagnated, leading to the slow degradation of morals over time. Now on paper, this sounds like it could be interesting, but these elements were never explored, and the game gives you a couple of lines about this and it moves on pretty quickly. For example, one of the big plot devices is soul hacking, which allows the main character to revive people who recently died through the use of technology. However, this is at the cost of the main character seeing the most intimate and private memories of that person they revived. And understandably, there is context as to why this is okay within the story. But in the grand scheme of things, I believe it would have been interesting for at least one of these characters to give some pushback about being resurrected, but that is on the writers for not capitalizing on that to enhance the atmosphere, leading me into the environments that were also bland and lacked any personality, which made exploring feel boring and unenjoyable, with some areas having low resolution backgrounds and the vast majority of the explorable areas being things you could find in many other games, with dungeons being a shipping yard, an abandoned subway station, and an office building, in addition to a weird underwater forested area that's inside a building, but never explained, leaving only one really interesting area, which is the Soul Matrix, which is vast, expansive, and contains a lot of side content. And when it comes to optional areas, the game just reuses assets from the main story dungeons, which isn't ideal. Honestly, I'm not opposed to reusing assets. A great example of this is Final Fantasy XIII-2, where you explore the same areas at different periods of time, but the game makes these places feel new by changing the music, weather, and the color grading of that level, making them feel brand new. But Soul Hackers 2 doesn't do anywhere near that much work. This takes me to the overall visuals, which are acceptable, but honestly this could be a PlayStation 3 game, with games like Uncharted 3 and Final Fantasy XIII being over 10 years old at this point and still being visually comparable or better if you play them on PC at higher resolutions. However, there is one great thing among the visuals, which is the character designs from artist Shiro Miwa in their 3D forms or 2D portraits, but even they can't save the rest of this game, so let's jump into the story. So a basic summary of Soul Hackers 2 is that it takes place in the near future, where a sentient being called Ion that was created from the world's ambient collected data foresees that the world will end if someone doesn't intervene. So Ion creates our main character Ringo and another agent of Ion called Figure to enter the real world and save it. During Ringo's journey, she saves people who are important to saving the world, who are Arrow, Milady, and Saizo. Then they join the team. As these 5 people try to stop this dark future, they figure out that they need to find the 5 covenants, which are great sources of magical power. And when someone possesses all 5 covenants, they can summon the Great One, who is one of, if not the strongest being in the Megami Tensei multiverse, which would give that person the power to destroy the world if they wanted to. So our heroes set out on their journey, defeating giant organizations, strong individuals, and someone within their own group to stop the summoning of the Great One and save the world. To be honest, there's nothing special about this story, and most of the interesting bits are hand waved away almost as soon as they're introduced. What I want to focus on here is the more questionable decisions in this narrative, starting with the covenants and their place within the story. I admit that this could just be me, but the fact that the central point of conflict in the story is purely magical when referring to the covenants defeats the purpose of this being a Soul Hackers game. The whole idea of this spin-off series is to see how the ideas of the Megami Tensei universe meshes with a cyberpunk world or elements. But when you make the main plot point solely magical with very little to no influence from the cyberpunk world that this game takes place in, you end up wasting the setting, which is a big selling point as to why some people might like this series or give it a chance in comparison to other Mega 10 games, leading me to dislike the Covenants the more I think about them. This leads me to my next point, the severe lack of cyberpunk elements within the story. After the intro of the game, any semblance of cyberpunk influences jumps off a cliff, and the only time they come back up is for plot convenience and they jump off again. So moving on to my last point about the story that will delve into heavy spoilers, so click here to skip this section. Figure's late game character development comes out of nowhere. Figure, just like Ringo, is a recently created agent of Ion, meaning that she doesn't have much experience dealing with people. She's a living supercomputer with a personality, and while she doesn't act childlike at all, for some reason near the end of the game, Figure, who has been the most static character throughout the entire game, goes off the deep end by taking the Covenants, attempting to use them to brainwash everyone on Earth into having the same mindset to end conflict permanently. And do you want to know Figure's motivation for doing this? Well, Figure has 2 conversations with a character named Raven, and upon Raven's death, he has such a profound effect on her that Figure tries to carry out his will in one of the worst ways possible. Instead of being influenced by the people she's been on this journey with that I believe takes place over a couple of weeks at minimum, she throws all of that away over a guy she kinda likes and has barely talked to. I could play devil's advocate and say that the writers wanted us to read between the lines and try to understand how impactful these conversations were to Figure, but considering the rest of the main cast makes it very clear about how they feel at every point within the story, I can't give Soul Hackers 2 the benefit of the doubt I would give a game like Nier Replicant, where you have to look past what's on screen quite often. I feel like the writers wanted to stir up some internal drama with our main characters but didn't execute it properly, leading to a very lackluster finale in my opinion. And at this point I would talk about the rest of the characters, but I don't think any of them are interesting enough to expand my thoughts on. However, that's not me calling them bad, I just found them to be very generic. It feels like the people who worked on Soul Hackers 2 tried to appeal to as many people as possible, and based on what I've seen online, didn't appeal to anyone, with some people calling this a watered down Persona due to social mechanics, or baby's first Megaten game because of how easy it is compared to other games in the franchise, leaving Soul Hackers 2 as the most middling game I've played in a long time, with me not having a strong opinion on the game either way. And I don't know if I'm ever going to figure out how I feel about this game because Soul Hackers 2 doesn't know what it wants to be. If you enjoyed the video, please like, subscribe, and share my content. Also, if you wish to support my work directly, becoming a YouTube member is the best way to do so. And if you want to watch more, there's another video on screen right now.